I moved around a lot as a kid. We were the kind of family that would have boxes that would always go unopened and undisturbed between moves. My dad was a good guy but had issue with authority, so he usually had issues keeping a stable job for more than a year or so. When the lease was up, we'd move closer to his new job. Anyways, during one of these moves, my dad found a steal next to his job. It was an old 2-bed, 1-bath house with a detached garage. I want to say it was around $300 a month for rent in 2003. Apparently, it was in a rough part of town. The landlord told us, "I won't go into the specifics, but I am required to tell us that someone had passed away in the house within the last 5 years." My dad saw a great deal and shrugged it off. We moved in soon after, and things started very quickly. There were noises in the house all the time. It was like we had other people living there. It would generally be noises that you'd expect when other people were around. Things like drawers opening and closing, doors swinging around on their own, water turning on in the bathroom, and then back off. Nothing malicious was happening, so we just lived with it. Another weird quirk about the house was that the front door had a keyhole on both sides, so you could not leave the locked house unless you had the keys. You can probably guess where this is going. But not a week or so after we moved in, we lost the keys. Boxes still littered the house and we were still in unpacking hell. So my dad, obviously stressed from the whole situation, started getting loud about the keys. He accused me of stealing them. He was cursing and being a general pain. Then, out of nowhere, we hear the keys hit the floor in the living room. Right in front of the couch, right onto the floor. He picks them up, tries to rationalize what just happened, says "F it," and leaves the house for work. Over the next few months, the stupid keys are the center of the activity. My dad would put them in a glass bowl on top of out-tube TV every day after work, and somehow they would be moved by the morning. My favorite spot by far was when we found them in a sealed box of pots and pans that we needed to unpack. It had those little handle holes on the side of the box, and it's like someone just shoved them into the hole out of spite. We all got a good laugh out of that one. Right now you're probably like, okay, what's spine-chilling about some noises and some keys moving around? Well, here you go. The worst thing that happened fairly frequently was the stomping. Most nights around 2 to 3 a.m., there would be very heavy footsteps pacing in the hallway outside of our bedrooms. I confirmed with my dad when I was older that yes, it kind of freaked him out too. We had been living in this place for about 8 months at this point, and I was probably around 8 years old. I heard the stomping one night and I just couldn't take it. I screamed out into the hallway, "Stop stomping around. I need sleep too, god damn it." 15 seconds of silence. Silence was abruptly interrupted by what sounded like a bull running full speed to my room. Then my door had 3 very aggressive slamming knocks on after another. It was so loud my dad woke up and came to check on me. My stomach started to turn, and I suddenly felt like I had to use the toilet. I was frozen in bed when I heard my dad call out to me, "You okay, buddy?" from his bedroom. I mustered up the courage to head out to the hallway. As I got up, I could tell something wasn't right. I was shaking like a leaf and my bowels were trying to evaluate while I was walking. I ran as fast as I could to the toilet, but it did not help. There was a trail from about halfway between my bedroom and the toilet, and my poor dad, worried about my safety, followed me into the bathroom to figure out what the hell just happened. I explained everything, crying on the toilet, making a mess of myself and the house. I was embarrassed and terrified. After this, my dad told me, "If you ever feel uncomfortable, you can come sleep in my room. Nothing can bug you when I'm around." The final straw came a week later. My dad had been dating a girl for over a year, and she had been staying with us more and more. One of the nights she stayed over, they had a really minor fight right before bed. I think it was about cleaning chores. Anyways, they both went to bed grumpy about it. Right around that magic 2 to 3 a.m. mark, his girlfriend got yanked out of bed by one of her ankles and got dragged out of the bedroom and down the hallway. By her account, she woke up after she was on the floor and felt someone pulling on her leg, and it took her a while to realize exactly what was happening. She shrieked, and whatever it was, let go. She ran back into the bedroom and turned the lights on and explained the whole thing to my dad. He sent me off to an aunt's house and stayed in the house alone for a few months while looking for another place to go. Figured it would be safer without me there. During the packing and moving out of the house, my dad had some friends swing by to keep him company while he packed. Almost everyone who came by to help mentioned that they saw a small white dog walking around right when they entered the house. Yeah, that place was haunted. AF. I still think about it from time to time. Wonder if the people who live there now deal with the same stuff, or if it's all calmed down. Not like a ghost, but really scary one, at least for me. When I first arrived in Melbourne, everything felt unfamiliar. Cold, empty, distant. I had no job, barely enough money, and the only thing that gave me a sense of freedom was an old car my parents helped me buy after my uncle insisted that public transport wouldn't get me far. It wasn't much, but it kept me moving. To make ends meet, I signed up for Uber Eats. Most nights blurred together, driving across lonely suburban streets, dropping off food at strangers' doors. But one winter night, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. It was my last delivery of the night. The suburbs had already gone silent. Melbourne streets empty, swallowed in darkness past 8 p.m. The kind of silence where even your own breath feels too loud. By the time I reached the area, it was just after 9. The street was pitch black, only a few dying streetlights flickering at long intervals, throwing weak circles of light that never seemed to touch the ground. I switched on my high beams, scanning the mailboxes for the right house number. Then I noticed one house with its lights on, warm yellow spilling through a large glass window. It had to be the one. I pulled over, made a U-turn to face the road for a quick escape, and that's when I saw her. An old woman, dressed in a black sweater, a hulking German shepherd by her side. She stepped into the window's glow, her eyes reflecting the harsh glare of my headlights. Slowly, she lifted her frail hand and began knocking on the glass. Thud, 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 staring directly at my car. Something about it was wrong. Too deliberate, too unblinking. I froze, my hand on the door handle. That's when I noticed the mailbox outside. It wasn't the right number. My delivery was for the unit just next door. Relief washed over me for a moment, but as I turned the wheel to move ahead, I glanced back at the window. She was still there, still knocking, her hollow eyes locked on me. My chest tightened. The street felt colder, darker, as though the world beyond that window had ceased to exist. I parked near the correct house, grabbed the delivery bag and forced myself to step out. And there she was, still at the window, still pounding her fist on the glass in the same slow, rhythmic pattern. Thud, 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 like a grotesque metronome syncing with my heartbeat. A shiver ran down my spine so sharp it almost buckled my knees. I dropped the order at the door as quickly as I could, praying the customer would open, take it, and let me leave. On my way back to the car, something inside me made me look again. I wish I hadn't. She hadn't moved, not an inch. She stood there, her face pressed close to the glass, her hand still hammering that same lifeless rhythm. And this time, I swear, it felt like she was calling me, beckoning me closer. I panicked, ran to my car, fumbled with the keys and started the engine. Yet against all sense, I couldn't resist one last glance. Through my side mirror, I saw her, unchanged. Dog unmoving, hand still hitting the glass, eyes still on me. My mind screamed to drive, to flee, but a fragment of conscience whispered, "What if she's in trouble?" Against better judgment, I stepped back out. But I didn't go to her. Instead, I knocked on the door of the customer I'd delivered to and stammered out what I had seen. That an old woman was banging on her window, staring, calling for help. The man at the door just stared at me. His face pale, unreadable. Then, finally, he exhaled and said, "Don't worry. She's not, well, she does that. She has a mental condition." He admitted he'd been terrified too the first time he saw her. Now he simply accepted it. His words should have comforted me, but as I walked back to my car, my legs trembling, I realized something worse than ghosts exists. Things that wear human faces but move with unnatural patterns. Things broken, unpredictable. And as I drove away, my headlights caught one last glimpse of her, still at the glass. Saint banging, still staring. Not a ghost, not a spirit, but somehow far scarier. For the past few weeks, strange things have been happening. And if I've pieced everything together correctly, a serial killer is after me, and in a few days, I'm going to die. I don't know what triggered the beginning of all this. My shift ended at midnight. It was a normal Friday night. After work, I went home. Before bed, I opened my laptop. I had this crime novel idea in my head for days, and I wanted to start writing it. I wrote until around 3 a.m. I was half asleep when I typed the last sentence. And at last, the sound of the killer's footsteps echoed in the empty street. I was proud of the first chapter. I shut down my laptop and went to the kitchen for some water. While drinking, I saw two shadows outside the window. At first, I thought it was just a tree swaying in the wind. Then, I heard a woman scream. I froze. The street was completely empty. The scream cut off suddenly. Now, there were two shadows on the building. One was lying still on the ground, the other was moving. And it quickly slid out of sight over the roof. I went outside to check, still in my slippers and pajamas. The street was silent. But when I reached the neighboring building, I couldn't believe what I saw. A woman was slumped against the wall, covered in blood. I recognized her. She was the kind lady who brought me pie when I first moved in. I called 911 and tried to stop the bleeding. But when I checked her pulse, it was gone. She was already dead. The paramedics confirmed it when they arrived. The police asked me a bunch of questions. Did I see the killer? Where was I? Did I notice anything unusual? They took my statement at the station. I got home around 5 a.m., collapsed onto my bed, and thought, this was the worst night of my life since prom. If only it had stayed that way. The next day, I was a mess. I couldn't focus at work. My boss let me leave early. When I came home, the police had blocked off my street with yellow tape and squad cars. The noise was unbearable, so I turned back to my story. Writing always calmed me down. I finished writing the second chapter I had planned in my head. After writing the last sentence, I heard a siren from next door. His final words sent a shiver through him. Later, I went for a walk in the park to clear my head. I sat on a bench, watching kids play, when an old man with a cane sat next to me. He asked, "Did you hear about that murder?" "I didn't just hear about it," I said. "I saw it from my window." His eyebrows shot up. "Really?" "Yeah," he sighed. "You can't trust people anymore." "You never know who's good or evil," I nodded. I was suddenly uncomfortable. I stood up to leave. The man called after me. "Good day, son, and don't forget to watch your back," I told myself. It was nothing, just a random warning. But his words kept echoing in my head all the way home. That night I sat back down at my laptop. I wrote furiously. Hours later, I typed the ending of chapter 3. He barely dodged in time. Looking up, he saw that same face staring down at him. The next day at work, things got worse. A black SUV pulled in. The driver got a receipt for gas. Then a woman walked in too. She looked strange. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking. I ignored her. When the man who just got the receipt mentioned a problem with the pump, I went outside. It was acting up occasionally. I helped him. When I came back, she was standing right at the automatic doors. I almost crashed into her. Startled, I stumbled backward, right into the path of the SUV that was pulling out. I barely avoided getting run over. The woman didn't even flinch. She just stared at me. For some reason, this woman had really gotten on my nerves. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. Then she turned and walked away. My shift was over, so I left. When I got home, the police teams and the crime scene were gone. I desperately needed a distraction. I found myself at the computer again. This time I really felt the urge to write. After 4 hours of uninterrupted writing, I typed the final sentence of the chapter. And finally, he heard the sound he feared. Knock, knock, knock. As I always do, I made my coffee and started reading the story I had written from beginning to end. The reason I do this is that I write in parts, so I don't always capture the flow of the story perfectly. While reading, the story took on a whole new dimension in my mind. I read the first part in detail. While correcting typos, something in a line caught my attention. He ran towards the direction of the scream. He knew he was too late. She was already gone. He collapsed beside the woman's lifeless body, and at last, the sound of the killer's footsteps echoed in the empty street. A theory began to form in my head. I continued reading, unconcerned. It was just a coincidence. Every time he tapped his cane on the ground while talking, he flinched. Finally, unable to stand the strange old man any longer, he got up. As he turned around, the old man called out to him, "Don't forget to check your back." He didn't reply. The man's last words had caused him to tremble. I started reading the next line. Again, when I reached the last paragraph, I noticed the same thing. He raised his head. He was startled by the bulging eyes that suddenly appeared before him. His feet moved back as if wanting to flee. At this moment, he hadn't noticed the SUV spinning and screaming down the road. He barely dodged in time. Looking up, he saw that same face staring down at him. I sat up straight in my seat. I was in indescribable fear. My eyes welled up as I read the last line. He understood now. All the pieces had fallen into place. Even the chair he was sitting on suddenly felt uncomfortable. He couldn't stay in place any longer and jumped up. He paced around frantically, his ears focused on a single sound. He sat on the couch to calm himself. He wanted to believe it was all his imagination. To lessen his fear even a little, he buried his face in the pillow. He waited in horror for the slow sound of the door. And finally, he heard the sound he feared. Knock, knock, knock. This couldn't be. It was impossible. I don't know how I didn't realize this while writing, because I never considered the possibility of something like this happening. I thought I was inspired by my experiences when writing. It was the exact opposite. I was living what I was writing. I started pacing the room. I thought about calling the police. There was no crime committed yet, and as I wrote, I hadn't even heard the sound of the door yet. I thought I was mixing up the timelines in my head. Maybe I had lived it first and then written it, remembering it differently in my head. In fact, I believed this possibility quite strongly. I calmed myself down a bit. As I said, reading too many horror stories made me confuse the real world with fiction. I sat on my couch and sighed. It was all my fabrication. All of it. And then I heard it. 3 knocks on my door. I froze, looked through the peephole. No one was there. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe a misheard? But then, louder this time, 3 more knocks. And 30 seconds later, again. I don't know what to do. I thought about deleting the story. I even rewrote the ending so the killer just vanished. But the knocking hasn't stopped. God, maybe this is my last note before I die. I'm going to try to escape.